Hello and welcome to this edition of the Life and Leadership Connected podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. My name is Dahlén and I'm your host. In this podcast, we talk about life purpose and why that gives us meaning and direction in our life. We talk about life and leadership. What gives us life? How do we become and continue to be a good leaders with great impact on other people? How do we combine life and leadership in a good and healthy and sustainable way? These are questions we will discuss in this podcast. If you want more information, go to lifeandleadershipconnected.com. I'm your host and coach, Dahlén. Let's dive right in this episode. Yes, hello and welcome to this introduction to this new podcast called Life and Leadership Connected podcast. My name is Dahlén and I live in Sweden and I'm married to my lovely wife Christina. Yes, we live in Sweden in a small country and we live in a city called Jönköping. I love to help people, working with people, mostly on one-on-one. It's here that I have my strongest people skill set. I coach people. Why do we need another podcast, you might think? Well, I will tell you part of my story. Then you might understand and hopefully be inspired by it. When I was much younger than I am today, I wondered, what shall I do in life? Which path should I take? Have you ever felt the same way? Through a moment of inspiration from a talk in a conference, I decided that I wanted to become a marine biologist. But after a few years in those studies, I stopped. It didn't feel right. Some years later, I got into teacher's training, which I also finished and started to work as a science teacher. But I still didn't feel quite right. Through trial and error, I finally found something that made all the difference in my life: pastor's training. This later led to that I and my wife started a house church, and I began to disciple and train people. Next goal of mine in my life was when I found coaching training from the company organization called 5 Capitals. This training helped me to find part of me. I finally found something that suited me like a hand in a glove. A result of this training was that I decided to start up my own coaching business, Life and Leadership Connected. I wish I had found this opportunity a bit earlier in life. That would have saved me from much of the frustration I experienced then. This is where this podcast comes in. I've called this podcast the Life and Leadership Connected podcast. That is also the name of my coaching service, Life and Leadership Connected. The reason for that is that these are also the areas I struggle most with. Life, leadership, and connection. Connection. What I mean by that? I mean life purpose. What higher purpose outside of myself and greater than myself is my life connected to? How can I live a good and healthy life without too much stress? How can I become and continue to be a good leader that influences people in a good way? Why do I do what I do in life? What is my motivation? What drives me? Is this a healthy and sustainable motivation? Is there a higher purpose? I found my answers to those questions and continue to discover those answers. Have you found your answers to those questions in your life? This was a short intro and teaser to what's coming. In part 2 of this podcast, I will go into more detail around how I am going to form this podcast and answer the questions what, how, when, and who. What will I do? How will it be done? When will it start? And who will be in it? Go to part 2 of this intro podcast to find out more about this. I'm glad you're here, and I hope you will continue and tune in to part 2 of this podcast. I will end with a quote. A man with a purpose is a man of excellence, a man that lives his life to the fullest. He has passion, drive, and unrelenting desires to be the best he can be.